the New York City COVID, was it health director? He was the former chief medical officer, something like this. COVID czar.
Yeah.
Was involved in orgies and during COVID. And this just goes to show, while kids were locked down, we created the most suicidal, alcohol-addicted, drug-addicted generation in history, the sickest generation in history. The people who were in charge were engaged in rabid sex parties and orgies. And tell us about this, and I want to play some of the tape from James I think it was either James O'Keefe or Stephen Crowder.
It was
I don't
Crowder.
know.
It was Crowder pulling a James O'Keefe. Yeah.
Yeah, it was Crowder.
It was definitely a James O'Keefe move. Yeah.
So
This makes me so angry. I can't even tell you, Charlie. They stopped us from going to church. They shut down our churches, and then they had drug-fueled sex parties. We were not allowed to go to church and be with our community, and they had drug-fueled sex parties because they wanted to blow off some steam. They required us to take vaccines, experimental vaccines, which we know were experimental because they only got an experimental use authorization from the FDA. And then they went off and did this. They hosted this guy, Dr. Jay Varma, who sat there every morning with Bill de Blasio giving their 10 a.m. COVID briefings to the whole city, who they said to lock down, take your drugs, don't go to school, don't go to work, all of these things. And then this is how they behaved. It mirrors what Bill de Blasio did when he closed down Times Square for New Year's Eve and then had his very own dance party with his wife in the middle of an empty Times Square while Andy Cohen got drunk on CNN and eventually got chastised for cursing out Bill de Blasio live on air. So the whole thing was absolutely insulting, degrading, humiliated. And I am glad that he got humiliated by Stephen Crowder's undercover reporter. I am glad that he has had his, face handed to him in this way, because it's absolutely unconscionable. And he knew that what he was doing was completely wrong. He's since admitted that, yes, he did go to these parties. He's claimed that his comments were spliced and diced and taken out of context by, right-wing extremists or whatever. Absolutely insane. And one of the things that he also did was he required everyone in New York City to take vaccines or be, barred from public life. We couldn't go to restaurants. We couldn't do anything else. Eventually, they required kids to take it. I stopped being able to take my son anywhere. We started going to Jersey. It was absolutely absurd. And then this is what he's doing. Requiring people to take vaccines cost frontline workers their jobs. Teachers, firemen, cops, city workers could not go to work anymore because they didn't take their vaccine. And this is what he does. He goes out there and romps around with his friends and his wife. I mean, to top it off, this is their marriage, is doing this kind of thing. I suppose they're all consenting, but what have you. It's sort of disgusting that this is the man in charge of public health. And then he also prevented Kyrie Irving from playing basketball because Kyrie Irving wouldn't take the vaccine. When eventually that was overturned in 2021, he was asked about it. And he had the audacity to say that it was important that professional athletes also be mandated to take the vaccine because otherwise it was a moral problem. And it showed that the powerful people thought there were rules for them that didn't, rules for everyone else that didn't apply to them. Absolutely out of control. And this was the man that Bill de Blasio put in charge of public health for the city of New York. And Bill de Blasio was asked about it since he's off in Michigan somewhere. And he's like, oh, that was terrible. I can't believe Dr. Varma did that. But Bill de Blasio implemented the policies that were put together by this harebrained lunatic who believes that orgies are appropriate for public health and that, the rest of us just have to suffer alone in our homes. Our loved ones died on Zoom calls. They didn't let us see our loved ones as they died. I'm still just so angry about it. I was surprised
and
actually
he won't be held accountable. If you guys get angry about it. Yeah. His name's Dr. Jay Varma, the sex fiend, who locked down the kids of New York, kept people away from their loved ones. Yes, I know he lost the job, but held accountable would be some sort of criminal penalty. This is just...
It should be. And city council, I talked to Joe Borelli, who's a city councilman in New York, good city councilman. He was hoping that, and he and some other conservatives, they're the Common Sense Caucus, they were hoping that they could get this guy subpoenaed. But since he's out of office, they probably don't even have the power to do that.
Like 181.
I actually was the one who convince the mayor to make it a mandate.
Like, New York City found out that you're having sex parties during COVID?
Yeah, it would have been a big deal. Yeah, it would have been a real deal. We went to some, like, underground, like, dance party, like, underneath a bank in Wall Street. And we were all rolling, we were all taking Molly, and everybody's high. And I was so happy, because I hadn't done that in, like, a year and a half, like, a year or whatever. But I was looking around being like, I wonder if he sees me, they're going to know. Because this was not COVID friendly. The only way I could do this job for the city was if I had some way to blow off steam every now and then. So we rented a hotel, and it was fun. We all, like, took, like, Molly, and it was like...
Blake, your reaction?
This is the sort of thing you'll read, like, I sometimes like to imagine America if it existed in, like, ancient history and how an ancient history textbook would describe it. And you'll run into this in, accounts of ancient history. Oh, yeah, like the elites were just having these disgusting sex orgies while all these problems consumed the country. And generally the historians assume that these are made up or exaggerated because people have a political axe to grind and, we can't check them otherwise. But then we have this, and oh no, our elites actually are having insane sex parties while they lock the entire country down and impose tyranny. Anyway, in ancient times, they would sometimes have a revolution and, execute them. I'm not sure we're going to be that lucky.
So Libby, help me understand here. Has anybody else in the New York City public health apparatus apologized or resigned here?
No, not at all. There has been absolutely no accountability. There was no transparency. Blake, I do that exact same thing. I imagine what our time would be like if it was written in textbooks as well, the ancient history. I'm thinking Procopius here. But no, there has been absolutely no accountability, no transparency. They still just act like they did the exact right thing. Even Cuomo has been not at all forthright or apologetic, and he wants to run for mayor now. And he's the one who sent a whole bunch of nursing home patients back from their hospital treatment, not only to die in nursing homes, but to spread COVID to a bunch of other people so that they could prevent loved ones from being with their dying elderly relatives. So no, they think it's the right thing. And when they get the chance, they will try to do this again. That is what this is all about. And you can tell that clearly because Varma and de Blasio, none of these people feared the thing that they told us to be terrified of. They weren't afraid. They didn't think they were going to catch COVID from their friends. They took their little COVID tests or whatever. They weren't actually worried about it when they engaged in these disgusting rituals together while the rest of us were sitting at home watching our children slowly lose all of the learning that they had gathered. My son was out of school halfway through 4th grade, and it has been difficult ever since. And you see experts globally talking about the learning loss and the years that it takes to get that back. And that is no joke. And Dr. Varma had a great time taking ecstasy with his friends. I mean, my goodness, this clown, this no talent loser doing this. And the rest of us are sitting home. Oh, I can't even is the term for this. But no one cares. They want to do it again. And the more you look at the way that they behaved and the way that they treated us, and there were children that killed themselves on Zoom calls. This is what they were found later, having just sat there on a 30-person Zoom call trying to learn algebra or whatnot. And they went and got their family's handgun and murdered themselves because they couldn't take it anymore. I did a series at the Post Millennial during the pandemic talking to parents all across the country who were so troubled, and no one was listening to them, and no one cared what was happening to their kids. And there was a mom in Oregon whose son was having suicidal ideation, and he wasn't communicating that to her. She eventually was like, we got to get out of here. She took him to Texas. It broke up their family. The father stayed home. They went to Texas, and the son admitted that, yes, he had been contemplating killing himself during these long afternoon bike rides that he would take. And she was terrified, and she was right to be terrified. And these are just the stories that we know about. This was happening across the country. And this man believed that it was his right because he was telling us all what to do, that he could engage in whatever debaucherous nonsense with his wife and his friends that they felt like it. They felt entitled to it. And so that's what they did. And yeah, I think it's fully true that if they get another chance, they will try and do it again. And this is the guy also who then went went to work for a company that was making drugs for Mpox, which, if you remember, used to be called monkeypox. But a bunch of people who think they're not racist thought that was racist somehow, because apparently they're the ones who equate monkeys with Africans, which is insane. And so they changed the name of it. So he was out there trying to get everyone to, buy this Mpox drug that they knew was very, very ineffective, and they were trying to force it on it anyway. And he admitted to this fake date that he knew, and everyone else knew at this company, that the Mpox drug was not even useful, and they were trying to push it out anyway.